One night, in a room full of activists feeling sapped with defeat, I saw something miraculous take place. No clouds descended from the sky, no lightning bolt appeared. The miracle was of a different order. It was the miracle of holy play, the power of yes, and for activists at that time, the struggle to ban hydrofracking, the process of drilling for gas by blasting water, sand, and chemicals into rock. The battle was not an easy one, even in a blue state. This highly controversial process of fracking has been linked to both earthquakes and groundwater contamination. The people gathered in that room that night were activists from all over the New York area who had long fought about this and other environmental hazards. They were drained, angry, and out of ideas. But then I saw the energy slowly shift. Our facilitator coaxed us in the process of breaking down our experiences and reframing them through the power of play, through the power of yes, and. Our game involved us adopting a physical pose that reminded us of our opponents. We had the opportunity to imagine what being a big oil executive or an oppositional elected official might be like in such a moment, so that we could fully embody their position as well as ours. Another exercise had the effect of getting us to be open to the suggestions of others, to imagine different scenarios than ones we had all experienced. We were invited to reenact a memory of defeat and restage it right at that point that we sensed we were about to lose. This scenario involved a moment when people were at a protest, all primed and fired up and ready to move forward, until they witness an arrest, an act of power from an aggressor, a moment that takes a breath. Freeze, stop right there, take that person out, do this, start chanting, stay in place. The people in the scene, as well as the person who was directing it, could change, rearrange, and try out as many different endings as were necessary. In short, we were given permission to change our worst moments into powerful ones, to see the motivations of all the actors, and to reassess what was powerful about our collective action. We listened to one another, and in listening, we increased trust, and in trusting, resolved to strengthen our relationships. Each idea was engaged, every outcome considered, all options were on the table. It was abundant choice. Newly energized and hopeful that change was possible, we walked from the evening's games not bent down, but recommitted. And when I speak of games like this and others, I am speaking about the power of play, not as pie in the sky or as mere fun, but at the power of catching a suggestion from a fellow player and running with it instead of shutting it down. If we create space for all suggestions to come from all directions and all players and allow the game to play out, we may have more than we need to discern a new path. I like to call this yes and theology because the idea springs from a particular theater game in the vast canon of rehearsal improv games developed by theater directors such as Viola Spolin and her son Paul Sills, who founded the highly sketch comedy and improv troupe Second City in Chicago, which still flourishes today. My favorite variation of the game goes something like this. But I think I need DJ. DJ, can you come up here and help me for a second? You know, the windows are particularly dirty today, but wait, is that a web coming down off the screen?
Yeah, I think at least we're up here on the 32nd floor, right? It's a beautiful view.
Yeah, it really is.
It's gonna take a long time for us to clean all these windows.
I know.
Did you say something about a web?
Yeah.
Is that Spider-Man?
Yes.
He's real?
Yes. Scene. The rules of the game are like this. It's not possible for a suggestion given by one player not to be followed up on in some way by another. Every sentence must build on what was said before. Well, that was a silly example of the kinds of scenes that can be created. Collaboration and listening are never silly. Imagine amplified empowers us. When it catches fire, it's the very stuff of beloved community, moving forth into change, seeking out new directions. All of our first drafts are obtained without fighting. We may need to go back and put structure to ideas, and surely not all of them will survive, but we will improvise our way into a new skill. For the thing that chokes innovation is the fear of our own vulnerability, and the thing that stifles growth is judgment. When we suspend judgment, Viola Spolin argues in her book, Improvisation for the Theater, we minimize competition. When we suspend judgment, which is the expectation that there are winners and losers, then we have true collaboration, not ego, not one-upmanship. When we suspend judgment, we are not concerned with crowding out others so that our individual ideas are heard. We are concerned with the process and the potential of the spirit of the group. In Acts, the text describing Pentecost in the Christian scripture, which you just heard, we have, I think, an example of yes and spreading like wildfire. The context reveals much. The earliest followers of Jesus have lost their leader. Everything is up to them now. They must find new leadership, they must avoid being killed, and they must see through to a new vision. In the previous chapter of Acts, we are told that they witnessed the miraculous, the appearance of the resurrected Jesus in a vision. But they also witnessed two angels asking them, "Why are you looking up at the sky?" Practically slamming them. It's time for them to get busy on earth. The Pentecost begins, and everyone has gathered for a big public festival. As Jews, they share the same beliefs, but not necessarily the same language. Many of them, but perhaps not all, have heard about this Jesus, a rabbi and community organizer who had some radical justice ideas that have led to his capture and execution by colonial rulers. His followers want to spread his message. They want to spread his social movement, but one can understand that amid the dangers, there is a great deal of fear and entrust, perhaps both internally and externally. In the midst of this scenario, a buzz enters the crowd, and suddenly all can receive the message. All their imaginations catch on fire, and as if they have no barriers between them. Each one moved to act according to the language that they each understand. We may not have the ability to evaluate the supernatural claims surrounding the event in the minds of those who captured it to memory and then later to paper so many thousands of years ago. But what seems clear is that on that day, a little yes and was injected into the hearts and minds of people. They were able to hear one another, to listen to the winds of change, to dare to be intoxicated, and most importantly, to envision a new future. We all have the ability to speak. We all have the ability to change and move hearts. We all have the ability to discern justice. Sometimes the imagination itself needs sharpening. Young and old, sons and daughters, all will dream dreams. All can catch some of the fervor and promptings of new justice, and perhaps begin to act as one beloved community. The environmental activists at that workshop were experimenting with techniques from the Theater of the Oppressed method, developed by the late Brazilian director Augusto Boal, who was in turn influenced by Paulo Freire, the creator of the pedagogy of the oppressed. Boal changed the dynamic of improv theater by creating jokers and spec actors. In his Theater of the Oppressed, theater can take place anywhere. He brings his theater to Sweden and uses it to examine the effects of immigration. He brings it to a small town in Sicily where women assert their right to be treated with respect in an oppressively patriarchal society. A scene is enacted in a public square. The actors are a mix of professionals and locals who only had 2 days of training. And anyone, both the local police chief and the farm worker, can stop the action and change the scene at any point. The powerless are given voice through the actors. In Theater of the Oppressed, Boal relates how the theater in the public square challenges the status quo in every community it encounters. We can be and are both spectators and creators. There is no script. There is no preordained endpoint. There is only possibility and potential. What the spirit of yes and games teach us is that trusting also takes practice. We have to learn the process itself and get good at receiving and listening. Yes and theology does not mean that we have to suspend our judgment altogether. This is no blind acceptance, but the practice of loosening the spirit. The power of yes and is not limited to children, youth, and improv theater aficionados. It's not limited to those who feel comfortable in front of an audience or those who wish to wind up on Saturday Night Live. For in the end, they're only people willing to fail and fail again and fail harder until they can liberate that diamond of courage and possibility that will allow us all to make change. Because only by practicing and failing can you learn anything. And only by listening can you permit mistakes and allow excellence to thrive. Therefore, yes and is for your committee that takes care of buildings, your social justice committee, your board of trustees, and your hardworking staff. It's for when you feel you are at the top of your game and when you are deflated. It's for digging deep and finding your muse, for relating to people in a new way. Nothing can renew us individually and collectively than giving each other permission to succeed without judgment. So where can you use a little yes and? Where do you already find it? Now.
Dark and you can't see.